I have a good few fields now that are in need of getting a bit of clover into them. I suppose up until a couple of years ago, I was afraid of clover and bloat and stuff like that, but anything I've planted in clover the last few years, I'm very happy with it. So I think that's probably the way to go with more clover. Probably another bit of multi-species as well.
Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef podcast for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and as part of Signpost Sustainability Week, I'm joined by DairyBeef 500 farmer James O'Sullivan from West Cork, who is taking steps to improve the sustainability of his farm by increasing animal performance and incorporating clover and multi-species on his farm. James, you're very welcome. Can you give an overview of your beef system?
I suppose I'm farming 31 hectares split between two blocks of land near the villages of Leff and Newton in West Cork. Buying in about 90 calves this year, up from 80 other years. I suppose trying to finish as many of them as I can off grass before the second winter, at kind of 18 to 22 months. I suppose the target carcass weight, I suppose, at the moment is about 280 kilos.
And what's the breakdown? Is it bulls or heifers of the 90 calves that you're buying?
I suppose it's split evenly 50-50 between bulls and heifers, all Angus calves born in 2 weeks of age.
What are you looking for in the calves when you're sourcing them?
Health is number one anyway. I suppose they have to be healthy. I'm trying to buy an early calf if I can. All my calves now this year are born between probably the middle of January and the end of February. There's very few March calves there. I suppose I'm working as an AI technician for once ago, and so I'm in a lucky position that I've access to a lot of dairy herds, and I'm buying calves off 4 lads at the moment. I suppose carcass weight, is a big thing to try and get a bit of carcass weight into the calves, I suppose. And there's a bit of to and fro over genetics, I suppose, and trying to pick the right bulls for cows and stuff like that. But most fellas are accommodating enough, I suppose. Up until 2 years ago, I suppose I was buying a lot of my calves from marks and dealers, but 2 years ago I changed over to buying them all privately, and so far it's working out well anyway.
That's great. And I suppose talk through, once the calves are bought, how they're managed once they're bought into your farm and up to wean, and how you manage and...
Yeah, I suppose when they come in, there obviously plenty of straw underneath them at all times, I suppose, and plenty access to water and nuts and stuff. They're left settled usually for maybe 2 days, day or two, and they get their pneumonia vaccines, and they're getting one shot for IBR and another shot for PI3 and RSV. And I suppose that's kind of it really. They're getting their blackleg injections, the 2 courses of that, and they're done for coccidiosis as well. They're on twice a day feeding until maybe 7 weeks of age, and after that then I change them over to once a day feeding. I try and get them out to grass maybe for a couple of weeks before they're weaned, just to transition them over to grass. They'd be just out for a few hours maybe during the day and paddock near the shed and back in again. And I suppose there's a bit of work in it at the start, but once calves get used to coming in and out, there's no issue with them. And I think it's worked well now this year in particular. They've transitioned to grass very well. There's no setbacks really since they've gone out full time.
How are they being managed now since they were weaned?
This year now I've kind of changed from maybe other years. I would have given them a grass paddock for maybe 3 or 4 days at a time, but this year I'm giving them fresh grass every day, and it seems to have helped them a good bit in the transition to grass, that they're getting their fresh grass every day. They're actually, I suppose they were probably behind target other years, but they're probably 35 kilos ahead of last year's calves this year already. So it's worked very well, I think.
And in relation to last year's cattle, when they were finished, how did they perform?
They done fine from the fact that I got most of them finished off grass. I suppose the carcass weights are probably still a good bit behind the target, what they're trying to achieve. I suppose they're last year now they were only probably about maybe 245, 250 kilos. But I suppose some of that is down to maybe not knowing the genetics of the calves when I was buying them. There was always little bits of health issues with pneumonia and stuff in calves. made a few changes to the calf shed now last winter before the calves arrived, but it just tried to get better ventilation into the shed and a bit of fine tuning maybe too with the vaccination program just to stay on top of it a bit better, and it seems to have worked a bit better now this year. In fairness, there was no major issues with calves up until weaning or after weaning. They seem to be stayed fairly healthy all through.
And overall, what were the management of the cattle in the last 100 days before finish? How do you finish the cattle out of the shed?
Most of them would be gone. I'd be trying to have maybe 75% of them gone off grass before they go in. It's just from, we'll say, maybe the end of August on, pick out the best of them and feed them outside at grass for maybe 6 to 7 weeks, and just trying to get as many of them finished as I can off grass to avoid the second winter. I suppose it takes big pressure off the system if you're not as reliant on big amounts of making big amounts of silage when you don't have that heavier animal going back into the shed. It's mostly weanings that are eating silage for the winter, so it takes the pressure off in the springtime as well. You're not as dependent on closing up a lot of ground for silage, whereas you can kind of push cattle on in the spring, and it helps in that side as well.
Most definitely. And you've some paddocks sown in multi-species. How did you go about reseeding those paddocks?
Yeah, I suppose, Catherine, they were similar enough to grass only sward or grass clover. They were burnt off, I suppose, probably the start of May, but last year, I suppose, we had a long dry summer and we didn't get them reseeded until maybe the middle of into June. They were just burnt off and plowed and land levels, and it got 3 bags of 10-10-20 and 2 ton of lime to the acre, and it's done very well since then.
And how do you find managing the multi-species swards?
It's very similar to the grass, really, from the point of view you're trying to graze it every 3 weeks if you can for the main part of the grazing season. It probably needs a little bit more minding in wet weather. It's slightly more open, I suppose. Particularly this year, I suppose April and May weren't overly dry. They were more wet and dry, and done little bits of damage in it, but it's recovered well, I suppose. I suppose the big thing I see with the last year now, the first year, the chicory was very dominant, and you really needed to keep on top of it every 3 weeks, because it would really take off after the second to third week, and get ahead of you if you didn't keep on top of it.
And from a fertiliser point of view, how much fertiliser has that crop got?
This year now, all it got was, it was probably grazed in the middle of February, and it got 2,000 gallons of slurry after grazing, and it probably got 20 units of protected urea with sulphur in the middle of March, and it got nothing all summer. It got a bag of 10-20 there early September, and that was it really. And I suppose it's performed as good as a lot of the grass only swards. The clover, I suppose, has really taken over now in the last couple of months since midsummer. I suppose it's really finding its feet, I suppose, and driving the grass on in it as well.
And how are they comparing the grass only sward and the grass clover sward in relation to the amount of fertiliser you're using?
I have grass clover swards that I'm limiting the amount of nitrogen they get as well, because they don't really need it. But I suppose the grass only swards would probably be averaging maybe 100 units of nitrogen to the acre, so it's a big saving from that point of view, I suppose, and it's a job less to do, especially on outside farms, doing fine without having to spread nitrogen on it.
And from a grazing point of view, James, the stock that have been grazing in comparison, the multi-species, the grass-only swards or the grass clover swards, have you seen a difference in performance across the different groups of stock, or how they're eating out different swards?
It's hard to know if they're performing better or not, because they're kind of in and out of it. It's a mix of grass swards and the multi-species, but they're cleaning them out perfectly good, in fairness. Like I say, once you get into them, kind of every 3 weeks, they're not getting too far ahead of cattle. There's no real issue with the clean out. I suppose the first maybe 1 or 2 times that they were introduced to the multi-species, they might have been a bit slower getting into them, but there's no problem with them after that. They're cleaning them out perfect. Every bit as good as the grass on the swards.
And you've also incorporated some red clover into your system in the past number of years. How have you gone about incorporating that into your paddock system?
Yeah, I suppose this is my first year with the red clover. So I've no big history with it, but from talking to other farmers around me there, they seem to be very happy with it in the last couple of years. So I picked a silage field that wasn't needed reseeding, and we put in 5 acres this year. So I suppose the weather was very mixed when we were setting it, so I didn't get a chance to roll it. So I'm just going to graze it now a couple of times this year, a couple of light grazings with calves, just to thicken it up a bit.
And in your opinion, incorporating multi-species red clover and white clover into your system, how do you think that's improving the sustainability of your beef system?
It's reducing our reliance on chemical nitrogen anyway, big time. Like we'll still have to use P&K and keep the pH right, but the chemical nitrogen is the big one, I suppose. Without reducing our performance from cattle or the amount of grass we can grow from them, I suppose that's the big thing really, that we're not losing performance, we're getting the same performance out of it from less chemical nitrogen.
Most definitely. And going forward, James, what do you see as the next steps for your farm?
I have a good few fields now that are in need of getting a bit of clover into them. I suppose up until a couple of years ago, I was afraid of clover and bloat and stuff like that, but anything I've planted in clover the last few years, I'm very happy with it. So I think that's probably the way to go, with more clover. Probably another bit of multi-species as well, and we'll see the red clover, maybe a bit more red clover, but definitely a lot more white clover and a bit more multi-species, I suppose, in the next couple of years, just to, I suppose, reduce the chemical nitrogen that we need further, I suppose, if we can.
That's great, James. We look forward to seeing how it progresses in the coming year. Thanks, James.
Thanks, Catherine.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to James for joining me on the show. You can find further updates from the Signpost Sustainability Week on the Teagasc website and on Teagasc social media platforms. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.